Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, what we learned from 365 days of high-performing subject lines. This is a project that I've been working on personally for quite a while, so I'm excited to have a little play with the data. There is, as you'll see, a lot more data you can that will come in to this project that we could have explored, but I've tried to condense it down a little bit. For those who it's your first webinar or not been to one for a while, particularly warm welcome. My name's Richard. I'm the marketing campaign manager for the UK arm of Spotler. What that means is basically a little a finger in every pie, like a little bit of doing it. There's obviously a lot of email campaigns that go out to you guys to promote these events to our customer base and our lead gen programs. There's some social stuff in there, and there's obviously presenting webinars. Housekeeping again for those, we can stick to a fairly standard Spotler format, but just in case you haven't seen it, I'm going to talk for hopefully about 40 minutes. I'm just going to start the timer on PowerPoint, so I know if I'm running over. And as I said, we blocked out 2 till 3 for this, so that should give us plenty of time for Q&A at the end. You can see in there, there's a chat panel on your GoToWebinar module dashboard thing. I'd ask you to put questions in there rather than the chat. Put them in at any time, and I'll go through them at the end. But the reason to put them in there rather than chat is that GoToWebinar logs it against the email address you registered with. So if we don't get a chance to answer your question, or if it needs a really kind of personalized or in-depth response, it's much easier for me to drop you an email after and say, hey, sorry, we can cover it in the webinar. Happy to chat to you. And we absolutely will do this because the whole point of these things is to help you guys get better, answer your questions, and think about how you can apply this stuff. What I'll say, it's all going to be quite broad. I mean, this is based off our own data. The conclusions you draw from your own data may be different. So happy to pick up exactly how we did the testing, how we scored all these things as we went through, because that'll make more sense as we go through, and I'll reiterate it at the end. And the other thing is we always record these. As I said, I'll trim off that bit at the beginning when I was just getting the sound check and things set up. And we sent out to you for the weekend. Give us 24 hours to tidy it up, trim and make it look smartly branded, all that jazz. We'll send it out to the email address you registered with for this webinar. If you don't get that email, it will be on the website SpotlerUK/resources as a downloadable unit. Quite by the end of Monday. We'll do a bit more work in the back end to make that work for you, get that uploaded. But so if you have to drop out or you miss a bit, or internet connection dodgy, whatever, there will be a chance for you to catch up, rewatch it, revisit it. So I'm going to try. I want to ask you guys 2 questions for this, just to kind of set the tone. Subject lines is a thing that it is really important, but we probably don't think about it as much as we should. And so the first poll, which you're hopefully going to see, is when do you write a subject line for your campaign? Is it a campaign, audience, data? Oh, need a subject line quick, or is it right? I'm gonna start with the idea for a subject line and build from there. Is it somewhere in the middle? There's, despite the picture of judges, there's no judgment involved in this. It's hopefully it'll make a point, but it's interesting to see what people think. And I will, about most of you voted. I'll give you another couple of seconds to do that. I've got another one to come. 81% voting, and it's going roughly the way I expected so far, which is nice. So I have, what have we got? Let's give it 3 more seconds just to have a nice round number. I think most of you have voted. So 67% when I've written the content of the email, bang in the middle, probably say 17% just before I hit initiate, which is actually what I used to do before I started this research. So you're not alone in that. And then there's 20% of you, the first thing you do, that's bold. And if it works for you, fantastic. It's not the way I would do it. But it's interesting stuff for me to gather and to write about and talk about later. And then the next poll is sort of a follow-up question. How long do you take on that subject line? I can't see from the module who's voting in which way. I'm going to definitely look at who does it at the end and who takes the amount of time, and I suspect there'll be a correlation there as well. And yeah, the numbers are looking fairly similar. So if I'll give you up to 30 seconds to do that one and have a think about it. To be completely honest, it's anonymous. I think it's anonymous. We'll find out. In any case, I'm not going to shame you publicly in the webinar for whatever option you choose. Okay, most of you have voted on there, and we said 33%, less than 30 seconds before you click send, or less than 30 seconds to write a webinar, or write a subject line. You're the kind of people we're targeting at. That's good. This is going to be really useful for you because I'm hopefully going to show you little changes that can make a big difference. Half of you up to 5 minutes. Yeah, you're putting some thought in. There might be things you haven't thought about. So you'll probably think quite clear. You'll probably quite clear on this stuff. And then 19% of you, more than 5 minutes. Interesting. I'll be interested to see what I'd love to know from those of you who are in that group, what it is that you spend the time over, whether it's word choice, whether it's layout and design, otherwise. But that gives me quite a good insight. So that's you guys. And now this is where I'm coming from. That I'm going to hopefully the conclusions are fairly sensible because they're taken from a decent pool of data. We said 365 days, and to make it as relevant as possible, we said the cut-off time would be the end of last month. So from the 1st of July last year to the end of June this year. So the data is up to from 3 weeks up to just over a year old. I would have loved to do up to yesterday's data, but that puts an inordinate amount of stress on writing a presentation. So because it's 365 days, the quickest among you already know that's 1,820 subject lines. I think it's a pretty solid pool of data that we've got our hands on, and the conclusions should be useful. If you just take 3 or 4 subject lines, you obviously can't use anything useful. In an ideal world, you'd have millions of data points, but that would be a full-time job, and interesting as it would be, we've got other stuff to be getting on with. The other thing was criteria. And so we said high performing, and it meant for us that means it gets more than 2% click-through rate. The reason for that number is that UK-wide, that is your average. Obviously, different industries have higher or lower depending, but if you take them all and cut them across the middle, 2% is where you get up to. So anything above that is outperforming standard usage or standard performance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about low performers later, but that's still within the context of being significantly better than the average. You'll see what I mean as we go through. Now, there are 5 things we looked at for this. We looked at subject line length. We looked at whether you or not you use personalization. This is all in the subject line. This is not in the body of the email. We looked at whether you use emojis in your subject line. We looked at whether you specify the company name. So, Spotler webinar incoming. Richard from Spotler says hi, type that kind of deal. Again, that's the subject line. That's not in the sender alias. That's just purely the subject line. And then we looked at the day of the week. That's got some interesting stuff. I've saved that for last, but that's quite juicy, and that provokes quite a lot of debate among us, even with the data in our hands. So I hope you'll find that particularly interesting. So to give a little snapshot of the overall data, the average click-through rates across the time that we specify, and you see here, even the worst month, which was November last year, we were outperforming that 2% baseline by just over 6 times, 6.5, 6.75 times, roughly speaking. So even the worst case scenario is significantly outperforming the competition, which probably includes your competitors directly in whatever industry you're in. I think we have that industry data kicking around somewhere on the website. I'll try and link to it and follow us. And we firstly divided the content also into 4 different types, 4 horsemen of the inbox, 4 kind of, I know you could break down emails by all kinds of different ways, but this is the way we've chosen to do it for drawing clear conclusions and big enough data to work with. Our first type is sales and marketing emails, your standard promotional deals, buy now, new offer coming out. Well, that's the lead gen, driving that immediate demand. And there's 734 of those, so getting on behalf the data set is that one. We then looked at newsletters, the kind of the demand gen thing, that this is what's going on in the industry. For us, the point of a newsletter is to drive traffic to the website that's not immediately ready to buy, but so they know enough about us that when a buying opportunity comes around, we're in the brain. That's 306, so that's what's 15% of the content. Go to events then, so invites for this webinar, similar things for seminars or for big expos, your B2B marketing trade shows, your TFMs, those kind of things that we go to. And we included follow-ups, like the kinds that you're going to receive in this event sector. There's an argument they could be in functional, but we've chosen to put them under events for neatness' sake. They're about 15% again. And then the rest are your functional newsletters, your functional sends. Like we deliver all our resource downloads as emails. These are things like, thank you for signing up, or welcome to this, or there's a lot of double opt-in stuff that still comes up several times. You say register the website, can we send you this email? That's that kind of thing. There's 429 of those in the entire data set. And see, even within those, you see there's some pretty stark differences. As you'd hope, functional emails, the kind that are not trying to get you to buy something, but need you to do something as part of a customer seller relationship, they get higher. 34% is low. I would be worried if my contract renewal invites were getting only a third. They are significantly higher. Makes sense? Happily for people like me and others in the room who are of a similar job description, sales and marketing is then the second highest once they work. Events and newsletters are roughly similar on about 10% average CTR across all the data. But the first thing we broke down within those subgroups of the data is the subject line length. And the reason it matters is because my inbox looks like this. I'm not saying that I'm the gold standard person or the person who uses the most common way, but this is how I have my preview pane Outlook. And what you can see there is if you go over more than about 50 characters in a subject line, I'm not seeing it. So anything that's in that 50+ block is wasted. You've got to get your value in early. And there's a good webinar, your recording is available. Short, sweet, job done. No messing around. So what we discovered with length is there is nicely a very neat correlation here between performance and length. And you can see our highest performer, which has got, I believe, 85%-ish click-through rate. So 5/6 of the audience clicking, not just everything, clicking through, because the subject line providing enough value in relation to the content that they went on and did whatever action the sender wanted them to, is just 20 characters. Very, very short. And there is here to download. It's exactly the kind of one you'd expect to have a very high click-through rate. I'm super intrigued by the 15% who downloaded something and then didn't click on the download. That's a story that I haven't been able to investigate in this data, but there must be something there going on that I would love to know. And if anyone's got an insight, share it with me, please. And then the longest subdomains, the ones that touch 200 characters, so 3/4 of it probably not getting seen by the recipient, is scoring just about 5%. So still better than baseline. It's not, you'd probably be happy with it barely, but you could do an awful lot better. And just for context areas, that's what 200 characters looks like in an email subject line. So if you're interested in the AP7, which I believe is a road in Catalonia, you're not going to see that in your preview pane. You might well miss the significance of that and miss out on the news that you want to know. So I've divided, as I said, this is where my caveat about low performance comes in. Remember, all of these are performing higher than average. They're performing higher than the UK-wide global base industry basemarks, but short ones with low performance are by far the most common. Long subject lines and low performance, yeah, there's a lot of those. There is one long subject line that sneaks in there at, what's that, 48% click-through rate at something like 136 characters. So it's doable, but frankly speaking, you're not playing the odds by going long and for high performance. And you can see short and high performance is the second busiest quadrant. So short over long is the way to go. However, caveat to the caveat, we've got the longest here and we've got the shortest. You've already seen the longest one. This is the actual shortest one. The actual shortest, not the highest scoring, it's even shorter than the highest scoring. And the reason I want to show you this is because, there we go, 5% for a super long subject line where most people aren't seeing the majority of your content. Oh, so we go super short, 8 characters. No, that's not better. Well, it's better, but not by the kind of magnitude you'd want if you can condense your subject line down to one word. So what you're actually looking for is somewhere in the middle. And somewhere in the middle turns out to be 31 to 40 characters. And this, just to be clear, this is grouping the CTR scores into tens, otherwise the graph is impossible to show on PowerPoint. I love a complicated graph, but I acknowledge that it doesn't come across well. So 31 to 40 is your, on average, highest performing sweet spot. And you see there's a kind of bell curve There, it's maybe not exactly where you'd expect it to be, but that is a pretty classic bell curve if I remember statistics from GCSE maths. So what does 31 to 40 characters look like? There you go. There's an example of a 40, there's a 31. And you can see within that, even that is not guaranteed by itself to be a winner, and there's still room for maneuver within that. But again, even that worst one, that's 14 and a bit times better than your industry average, so it's still smashing out the park compared to an average thrown together out. And there's not a huge amount of variety in length between the different types. Newsletters tend to be quite long. Events, surprisingly, I would have predicted if we go around that newsletters are the longest by far, but actually there's only, what is that, 9 characters in it difference overall. What this one I'm talking about is use of personalization in the subject line. And when I say personalization, I mean person's first name, I mean person's last name, company name. I do not mean targeting by their industry, because in my world, targeting people in industry is segmentation, not personalization. And if you're not doing segmentation well, then all the subject line flattery in the world is not going to save you. So personal things, not industry, not geography, not rank, particularly not departments. So, you know, news for sales directors, news for marketing executives, news for CMOs, that kind of thing. I would regard that as segmenting rather than personalizing first. It might be a small difference to you, but that's how I've chosen to present the data and think about it. So that's what you need to understand going into the next set of graphs. Personalization isn't particularly heavily used. Only 12% of the subject lines did. So we're talking less than 200 out of the data set. But the thing is, this is one of the graphs that has the biggest punch in it, because it's a really clear advantage to using personalization. You're getting a 50% boost in your average click-through rate by personalizing the subject line over windows. We'll look at this in the next slide of the variations within the different types. But if you're looking for a trick to use, if you're looking for something to boost your open rates, personalization is a really, really strong place to start. And you can see there, it's most heavily used in functional emails, which you might expect. Not really used in newsletters at all. Again, because I think a newsletter, you'd be doing segmentation rather than personalization. It's probably quite hard to have the scope of content and detail to personalize a newsletter to an individual person. You're probably looking at industries. You know, you're looking at news for engineering companies. You're looking at news for the Western Highlands. You're looking at news for Exeter and the surrounding area, that kind of thing. And then event emails, again, not much, because you're trying to appeal to a broad audience, probably there. And then effectiveness by type. Most of the time, it has a positive impact for sales and marketing. It's not, it is used, but it's used most, but still not by a lot of people. It has a positive effect for events. And for functional emails, almost none at all. I think that's because you'd be expecting a functional email to be addressed to an individual if it's, you know, contract renewal, if it's thanks for signing up, that kind of thing is going to be personalized to what they're acting anyway. So but the personalization of the subject line is going to make a huge amount of difference compared to just personalizing the content. Emojis is a slightly controversial one. Some people love them, some people hate them. I think the theory is that in an inbox full of just text, a shape or pop of color can really make a difference. Thing to note before we get into this, that an emoji will display differently in different browsers. So well worth checking that out. GatorMail includes the inbox checker, so you can see how things are going to look. Very useful tool, especially if you're doing this kind of thing, because it could be a pop of color. Some shows it black and white. Some people show the shapes differently. You may want to choose emojis tactically depending on what browsers your audience are using. Very little used now, so the emoji haters are probably in the majority. Only 7% of the subject lines that we tested using them, and actually compared to personalization, not missing out, you actually seems to have a negative impact. So those 7%, sorry, that's you, but you're probably dragging your performance down rather than improving it. I want to have a little look at effectiveness by type and the kind of difference between it. It has a small negative effect for events, quite a large negative effect on functional emails, I suppose, because you need to give us more money, your bill is due to renewal. Thumbs up is kind of a weird vibe, I guess. For newsletters, again, negative effects, but not particularly big. Again, a lot of them, I didn't get a chance to show these, but a lot of the emojis we looked at, they are relevant emojis. So for house builders, they use houses, they use obviously Christmas, Valentine's, Halloween, big time for emojis overall, because you've got obvious things to use in there. But if you can use business related ones, that will be better off. And it actually has a negative impact on sales and marketing emails for whatever reason. And then use of emojis by type. Sales marketing, sorry, it's the one where it's get used the most, and it's having probably the most significant negative impact. So if you're sending your buy now, your latest deals, stop doing that. We've seen a few where it's buy now, cash emoji, cash emoji, cash emoji, and I think that kind of screams spam to a lot of people. So if you can do, I'd be very interested to do a product one versus that as a split test, but beyond the scope of what I can cover today from the data that I've currently got. The other last internal within the inbox, which is, do you put your sender's company name in there? So another Spotler webinar for you, join SpotlerUK and that kind of thing. And this is actually the most used at 15%. Remember, emojis were 7%, personalization was 12%, but company name use up at 15%. So by some margin, the most commonly used. And again, it's really effective. You get, what is that, a 3 percentage point to a 2 or 3 percentage point boost up there. And if you're sending to 30 or 40,000 people in a mass kind of marketing send, then that's not an insignificant number of actual clickers converting through. And one of them could be the client that you just really need to get your half or your quarter or your year over the line in financial terms. And actually, this is fairly consistent across all the event types, functional types, newsletters. A little bit less common in sales and marketing, which is why I would have thought it would have the highest impact, but this is exactly why we do this kind of research. Sometimes it surprises us. And then in effectiveness terms, it's most effective for sales and marketing where it's the least used. One of the things, so if you're sending out your lead gen campaigns, put a company in there. And I think the reason for that is you're trying to appeal to people who don't know very much about you. Sending emails from Richard Wall about latest new deal on this, well, you're less likely to remember me more than you are the Spotler brand, because I don't have a logo, I don't have a color scheme, I don't have all this stuff that we call brand and marketing surrounding me. So you see there that actually it's the only place where it has a positive impact on effectiveness. When to send, this is a particularly interesting bit of information to go through. We wrote this down into two parts. We looked at days of the week, and we looked at weekdays versus weekends. And then just to see what's going on, we have the data. This is what I like to do. I like to dive into these little rabbit holes and see where they end up. There's surprising stuff in there. And I would predict, your attention to the right hand side of that graph, that Sunday is the best day to send by CTR rates. Now, we could argue that's because of fewer people are doing it, because especially if you're a B2B business, you think, well, no one's going to open it on the weekend. But if you're targeting the right people, clearly some people are. Again, with this data set, I didn't get a chance to look at who it is that's doing this. My gut would be that the more senior you are, the more likely you are to check your emails on Sunday evening or first thing Sunday morning, maybe before you get back breakfast. That's something I'd like to go back and investigate further and try to prove or disprove. We'll see another time. Monday sending also actually a bit of a surprise for me, because every day I come home from work and my oldest son says, "Daddy, how many meetings do you have today?" And if it's Monday, it's usually 3 or 4. The rest of the week, significantly fewer. So I would have assumed, based on that actually I'm not going to get through a lot of emails on a Monday. But there you go, 30% average click-through rate. That's twice as high as any of the other middle of the week ones. And actually for this overall study, it's fairly close, but Wednesday is the very worst day, the middle of the week. You'd have thought then people are into their work, they're not, they've got they spent the top of the week getting their time sorted. By Friday, they're cocking out ready for the weekend. So Wednesday should be the middle, but clearly that's not the case. I'm not a psychologist, can't explain why, but interesting. If anyone again has an insight into that, would love to know. So then days of the week by type, this is where it gets super complicated, but you can see again that Monday and Sunday just work for every particular category. The magnitude by which it works vary to it, and you can see that functional emails there are most likely to be, and again, if it's resource downloads or admin bits, you'd expect them to be significantly higher. But take a look at sales and marketing. You get the highest click-through rate on a Monday and on a Sunday, which is great news. It's worth trying it if you're not sending on a Sunday at the moment. Give it a go, because you may well be surprised. You might double your click-through rate and just reach that one client that you ideally need. So I've zoomed in on each individual one just to give you a bit more context on how it pans out. You go sales and marketing, you're getting 24% on a Monday, 21% on a Sunday, all the way down to, again, Wednesday is the worst, Saturday is the worst. So the weekend sending is clearly an art. And again, my personal theory of looking at this is this: people getting a jump on their inbox on Sunday night. We didn't include time during the day of sending. I think we can gather that. We can gather that data from within the Gator platform, but we didn't for this webinar. I should have said right at the beginning, we are planning to turn all this into a pretty hefty white paper with loads more room there to dive into the really odd little aspects and funny little asides and subsets. So keep an eye out for that when it comes out. That should be really interesting, and it certainly is interesting for me to research. I hope it will be for you too, to make it useful and sensible. Newsletters, the weekend's a bit less powerful there, I guess, because you want to, you can have to catch up on a newsletter over a coffee. You've got a week of news, you'll pick it at a time. Could be any time. It's not going to be time urgent. You're not talking about time limited offers or urgent things. That's one to kind of keep for your break and flick through. At some point in here, if it's Friday, that's the worst day to send a newsletter. You'd have thought round up of the week's news on a Friday sounds logical, but actually not the most effective strategy. You want a roundup of last week's news on Monday for maximum impact. Events get higher throughout the week. There's not such a clear-cut gap here. Monday and Sunday still dominating, Sunday not by as much, and then Saturday is the worst day. I should say this is about when you send your event invite. It's not about when you post your event. We've had a go at looking at which days of the week get most event attendees, but because we only do 1 or 2 a month, it's hard to get a big enough data set to draw really big conclusions from that. So I can't particularly advise on things like things. Again, if you have data on that, send it to me. I'd love to have a look around and understand how we can do that well. And then function emails. Sunday is actually the winner there, even better than Monday. And I suppose this is getting the stuff done you need to get done to then go and have a productive week. And then Thursday is the worst day. Now, my week is kind of, Monday planning, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning is executing, and Thursday, Friday is reviewing. So just thought functional things would kind of get a boost towards that end of the working week. And I've been told by many people on many different things that actually digging into the why can actually be less interesting than simply knowing what works. So I'm going to leave it with, these are the facts that we've got, these are the things that we've tested, and things that you should also probably go and test these things. You're not saying that, what I'm trying to convey with all these graphs is there are surprising things that make a difference, so you should test them, not just, oh, quick, we need to send our newsletter, or not our newsletters, that's a bad example. We should send all our marketing emails on Sunday night because that's the best time. It will vary for your specific industry and client base. But what I'm trying to show is that the magnitude of difference that changing whether you send on a Thursday or a Monday can make, even though they're both working days, and non largely the same. And then weekday versus weekend, this probably not a surprise based on what we've just been going over, but weekends get higher click-throughs. I still subscribe to the idea that it's probably because there are fewer people sending them, so there's less of an inbox to, oh gosh, I've got to wade through all these things. Anything that comes on the weekend, if I've set aside an hour to go through my inbox, and I get every day, and I get 70 emails on a Monday and 15 on a Sunday, Sunday ones get more attention because they don't take up big enough, don't take a bigger chunk of the time. So if you or your boss or your sales team or whoever has been pushing back against weekend sending, have to give it a try. You may well be surprised. And then our weekday versus weekend breakout by type. Again, it's fairly so, but actually event emails do better on weekdays. I guess because this is mostly going to be B2B data that we're doing. This should have said from the beginning, this is taken from Spotler's GatorMail platform rather than Spotler Pure 360, which is our B2C platform. So these events are probably, this data is largely skewed towards B2B senders. So I suppose work events happen on a weekday, so you deal with them on a weekday, that's fine. And then we get functional emails, a lot more bigger gap than any other for weekend. For the weekend by what's that, 9 percentage points. The difference for newsletters and sales and marketing is smaller, but it's still positive in favor of the weekend. So give the weekend a try. Just showing you the graphs in a bit more detail to help you draw that out and screenshot and take an action on it. So it makes about 2 points of difference for sales and marketing. It makes about the same degree of difference for a newsletter. Pardon me. For functional sends, it's a lot better to send at the weekend when people set some admin time aside. And events I put last because that's the only one where the weekday is much more powerful, is genuinely more effective, and it's about 3 points. So the margins are a couple of percent either way, but take a look at the size of your audience and work out what an extra 3% of click-through rate would mean for your website traffic, for your hitting your targets, for how many people you need to convert. If you only need 15 bits of new business to make your call to successful, and you're sending to over 2,000 people, then 1% improvement will get you there. So sign up for this, and those of you, particularly target those of you who spend less than 30 seconds. I know it's like that 31% of you listening in on the call. Little changes do make a big difference. It's worth just having a breath and thinking, can I find a relevant emoji? Could I get my company name in there without completely losing the meaning? Can I change the length of it to fit that? What's going to be the most effective for this particular audience? And second conclusion, go forth and test this. What I've hopefully shown you is that these things make a difference. I'm not saying that you'll see the same differences that we see. You may well have, because this is data taken from across our entire customer base. So some of you will be on that database. It's all been anonymized, so there's no worries about sharing your speaker for the perfect subject line. But you may find little quirks and different things inside your data sets. But test it, test your personalization, test your emojis, test your day and weekday versus weekends, because you may well be surprised by what you get. And I'm happy to throw open to questions for a bit. I actually rattled through that a couple of minutes faster than I thought I would. And I just wanted to close on a couple of ones that stood out, not statistically, but individual ones. We've had a lot of it today has been very broad. You know, this is that big trend taken from 300 pieces of data. These are just individual ones. When I was going through gathering, I thought that I like that. Got 60mm single screw extruder for person first name. If you have got to the point where you can target personalized products at personalized people in a one-to-one basis on an email, then your personalization strategy is supersonic, brilliant, it's amazing, excellent work. 100,000 people can't be wrong, because the reason I like this one is we set a lot of store by case studies at Spotler, kind of detailed. We pick one particularly happy client, get a deep dive into what their problem was, what their existing solution was, what we did better for them, how it all panned out. So taking one person and going deep into it, but this is a completely opposite approach to that kind of mass social proof. 100,000 people are happy with our product. I'm going to borrow this one. Next time we send out a case study, it's going to be Steve from Birkenhead who was using GatorLeads versus 100,000 people. Can't be wrong. I want to see which one does better because I'm genuinely fascinated to know the answer. For first name and last name, very, very formal for an email address. You'll notice actually that email communication seems to be a lot less formal than letters, broadly speaking. We can argue as long as we want whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a double use of personalization, keeps it super short, and we don't know what impact that's going to have. So I'd be interested. I like that one. It's short, snappy, uses personalization, which, as we said, is 50% more effective. So double personalization, in theory, could smash it out of the park. The last one I like is re-coffee. Particularly controversial one I find is whether re or forward in a mass or automated email is sensible, is useful, is appropriate. This one made it into our high performance, so clearly in this context, it is working. And last one to mention is next webinar is coming out next week on Wednesday, where we're talking about Spotler leads. That's a really nice tie-in, almost like we planned it, that you have great subject lines on emails to send you, to bring visitors to your website through clicking. Once they're there, what do you do with them? You spot the leads, you track their behavior, you see what's happening to them. You understand the route that they're taking. Are they going through your blogs? Are they going straight to white papers? Are they jumping straight to booking a demo or asking for pricing? GatorLeads will tell you that'll be a really good webinar. Same way you signed up for this one. That'll be Wednesday, the 26th. Hope you'll see you there.